Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you all for being with us online today for Padre's Ponderings. And it's a beautiful day here in the Low Country. We're on Cross Schools campus, and there is worlds of activities going on out there now. We have the big summer camp program that's going on. Have over 100 little children, and well, not little, they go up to 4th or 5th grade, involved in that from the church and the community. Outreach with the name of Jesus to touch children with the gospel. We've got the preschool program going on the other end down there, 100 and something children in that. And then now we've got old people coming in.
A bunch of folks.
A bunch of folks coming. 100 folks. Now this is Bishop Derek Jones.
Hi.
He is the presiding bishop for the jurisdiction
of the Armed Forces and
Chaplains.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And they have their annual convocation, and we hosted them a couple of years ago, and they wanted to come back, and so we're glad to have them back again this year. So they'll be, how many chaplains will it be, sir, you think?
We have close to 200 chaplains with their families attending.
That's a crowd, isn't it?
It's a good number.
That's a crowd. How about talk to us just a little bit about what is a jurisdiction?
Sure. Well, professional chaplaincies exist throughout all areas of our society, in industry, hospitals, hospices, law enforcement, and most significantly, of course, the United States military. And those chaplains are generally highly experienced rectors and pastors of churches who feel a call to serve in chaplaincies. And so if I were to equate chaplaincy to the medical profession, where your general practitioners, your family doctors are your rectors and your pastors of churches, chaplains are your specialists. They're your neurosurgeons. They're your orthopedic guys. They're your psychiatrists, those specialized trainings. So those are the chaplains that we field. And for the Anglican Church in North America, we field just over 300 total chaplains. Those chaplains are involved with 71, right now, as of right now, it changes, it fluxes, but 71 weekly services, which includes 21 church plants and churches around the globe, as well as a whole host of ministries involved in missions.
So they're still active in parish or mission ministry.
Some are full-time. They do nothing but chaplaincy. That's the majority. About 80% of our chaplains do nothing but chaplaincy. And then about 20%, mostly in the military range, military reservists and guardsmen, are rectors full-time or pastors sometime. In a couple of cases, we have individuals who are chaplains in like a hospital setting and also the military, in the military reserve.
Really?
So, yeah, it's quite a bit.
When you talk about scattered all around like that, this must be one of the largest, in terms of geography, one of the largest dioceses there is, isn't it?
We are
or jurisdiction.
Yeah, there are two jurisdictions in the ACNA: the Reformed Episcopal Church and the jurisdiction of the Armed Forces and Chaplaincy. So we function like a diocese within the ACNA. That's and there's some that would argue whether you're a diocese because we don't necessarily have a large contingent of lay. But what's also interesting is since 2014, and these are ACNA numbers, since 2014, the jurisdiction has been responsible for more than 1/3 of all church plants in the ACNA.
Whoa.
So I have for example, we'll be launching this coming weekend in Yorktown. A military chaplain has arrived at the Navy location, Navy station there. We go into that local community, into that area. We begin to advertise, and it generally takes about 6 months to a year to get things moving in advance. But we will be doing a launch of a new Anglican parish at the military chapel, which is located off post at Yorktown. Soft launch this weekend. I'll be there for the hard launch on the 4th of July weekend on the 6th of July.
So, the thought that came to my mind was I thought this was just about serving. Well, not just about, but mainly about serving the folks in the military.
Oh, no. Our military folks are our largest number of chaplains, but we're in education, we're in industry, we're all over the place.
I missed the whole thing about church planting. I didn't know that was a big thrust of your ministry.
A major portion of our ministry, we are involved also in missions. Our Anglican Office for Government and International Affairs, AOGIA, we have in the past represented the ACNA in virtually several areas around the globe to solve issues and crises. So truthfully, the jurisdiction, it goes beyond just the chaplains, though that's the crux and that is the meat and the bread and butter of our ministry. But we're across the board in all
Has the
areas.
jurisdiction been around a long time?
We were formed in 2007.
That's relatively new then.
Well, it's newer. It's older than the ACNA.
Oh, yeah.
But newer in most senses than several of the.
Well, before that, did the Armed Forces chaplains, how did they hook in?
Well, the
with
Episcopal
larger
Church obviously had chaplains, and so but what happened in 2007 was we began to see the African influence to try to bring a lifeboat to those who had previously been Episcopalian. And so we were created with Bishop Martin Menz and Bishop David Benna of the Convocation of Anglicans in North America. And so we were, up until just a few years ago, a dual jurisdiction with the Church of Nigeria and with the ACNA. And I made the decision to make the move to become fully ACNA, mostly because of the support that Archbishop Beach was needing from us and that we were able to provide. Foley and I have been deep, long-time friends, and so that was the right thing to do, both for the jurisdiction and for the ACNA.
Bishop Martin Menz was a good friend of this parish. His son-in-law was with us for 5 years.
I did not realize that.
Yeah.
Well, Martin is the patriarch of this. He continues to be very close. In fact, he'll be here this weekend to bring the message and be one of the co-consecrators for the 2 new suffragans that will be ordaining here in your church.
More suffragans.
We are consecrating 2 new suffragans. The ministry is very busy and very broad and expansive.
And I think that's a big part of it. You're so scattered out. You'd be no way one person could keep up with all that.
Last year, I was on the road for almost 22 days a month, and so that was with the support of 2 suffragans. And so, Bishop Mike Williams and Bishop Mark Nordstrom will be effectively retiring and becoming assisting bishops for us. And then Archdeacon J. Kai-Yang Yang and Canon Marshall McClellan will be becoming our new bishops-elect and bishops this coming Saturday here in your church.
And you're pretty excited about that, aren't you?
We're so excited.
So excited.
We are very, very excited. The day before that, we'll be ordaining 6 new folks into the church as chaplains.
One of them is ours.
One of them belongs to you.
Yeah, Dave Fisher.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, we've been very blessed with that relationship we've had. And we've got Nathan is a part of your contingent too, isn't he? Nathan Weaver?
Nathan Weaver. And we actually, you also have one of your vestry members that serves on our executive committee, Laura Strange, who is always a huge help. Listen, the relationship that developed 2 years ago with you, we cannot thank you and your church enough, especially allowing us to come back a second time, as quickly as we did.
I would suspect that large number of people, there wouldn't be many parishes around that would have facilities sufficient to handle that. I would think you'd have to go to some convention center or something like that.
That is true. We as a jurisdiction, despite our size, don't actually have our own home. We've been wanting to try to find one. Our home church is our training chapel at Anglican Church of the Good Shepherd in Pelham, but it's so small we can't even advertise the church. It's just a small rented space. And so we have had to rely on the larger churches to host us.
And I'm sure they're willing, aren't they?
There are some that are willing, but I will tell you,
Twist your arm a bit.
when they become aware of the task, they start to get rather wide-eyed and concerned.
Yeah,
it's a big undertaking.
Because you're bringing in more folks than most people have in their congregations.
Well, your entire staff is energized, plus a couple of extra hands to help us. So it's significant. When we have a larger paid staff than the ACNA. So we have about 17 paid staff that we have because of the breadth of our operations. We're a larger staff than even the ACNA.
Well, how do you support yourself?
We are completely internally funded. I can count on one hand the number of outside contributors, but the chaplains who are full-time pay their way. They pay me, they pay our staff, they pay for our ministries. And on the oft occasion that We get a donation. It's generally designated for a specific ministry, such as the Centurion Project, or we just sent the Reverend Canon Dr. Mark Quay to Tunisia as part of our education program. That's one of our ministries, teaching Christians and Muslims in Tunisia. Now imagine we go into a lot of these dark places, and some of these places that the Anglican Church has just given up on or just doesn't reach. We're going there.
So you don't get funding from the Anglican Church or the
No.
or the armed forces or anything like that?
No, we do not. As a matter of fact, there are 198 endorsing agencies. We are the only endorsing agency that is not supported by the parent church. In all other cases, it's the organization itself that's created as an endorsing agency, but the mother church of the Episcopal Church, just because most people are familiar, the Episcopal Church, their endorsing office has, close to a $4 million budget. We're 4 times the size of the Episcopal Church, and we operate on a budget that's about more than one quarter less. So,
good for you.
We're good with our money.
Tell me a little bit about your background. You were a military person, right?
I was military. I retired after 28 years in the United States Air Force. I was not a minister. I was a line officer. I flew fighters for my entire career. So flew F-16s, F-111s. Felt a call to ministry near the end of my military career. Moved into the reserves initially, and my exposure to the church was being the pastor of a small Cumberland Presbyterian, followed by a Baptist church. When I first, making my move to my family roots of being an Anglican,
so that was where your family grew up, was Anglican?
My father was Episcopalian, my mother was Methodist. And of course, she reminded me that John and Charles both died Anglican.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you were going back home.
I was going back home.
Well, those guys that fly those jets and all, those guys are pretty intense. Are you pretty intense?
No.
No.
I was just in one of my board members said that that's all right. That I was a little hard-headed. I just don't see it.
Well, that's another name for intense.
I think so, perhaps.
Focused.
But yeah, no. It's the comedy of God to put a fighter pilot in charge of a bunch of chaplains.
Well, when you were in the flying those jets around, do you have that sweet smile that you have now?
I do.
Or did that come later on?
Oh, you're kind. You're kind. I miss flying. I was fortunate that I got to fly 24 of my 28 years in the military, and so I missed giving it up. I was absolutely convinced that the Air Force was going to call me on the day of my retirement and say they'd made a mistake and ask me to stay on. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. So
you cried all the way home.
I did. I cried all the way home.
Well, tell me, how are you like Tom Cruise with that Top Gun movie and all that?
It's funny. I didn't have a whole lot of respect for Tom Cruise after the first movie, but I have learned that he's actually taken his aviation part of his life seriously, and he actually has impressed me. So
because that movie, as I understand, gave the public a general impression of what fighter pilots and all are like,
right?
But that's not you.
Well, I would say that the movie unfortunately portrays fighter pilots in a pretty appropriate light. What's really funny, I have no idea.
So it is you, right?
Yeah, it may be me. In the early days of my episcopate, I had Bishop Mike Williams. He wasn't a bishop at the time, but he was the second chaplain that we had. He so graciously and kindly walked beside me to say, Derek, you can't tell that story anymore. Or, Derek, you can't say those things anymore. Or, Derek, you're a bishop now. You can't do those things that way anymore. And without Bishop Mike, I don't know what I would have done. He was keeping me straight. I always laugh about the Top Gun movies because as a very young lieutenant flying F-111s, to make a long story short, we were supposed to be a 4-ship airplane flyby for an air show in England. The first airplane broke, and so the second airplane couldn't go because of the way the rules were, so we were going to launch 2 airplanes. My lead aircraft broke, so I'm the newest lieutenant in country about to go fly at an air show, and I'm going by myself. And so I went, and I thought, well, I'll just put on a show then. And I did. It turned out that 90% of the things that I did were absolutely illegal to do. And it also, to my unfortunate demise, it turned out the air show was televised nationwide.
Whoa.
And so when I landed, I was greeted by quite a few folks. And as I stood outside, my wizzo, Ken Williams, leaned over to me and said, well, great, maybe I can get a job as a truck driver, which showed up in the first Top Gun movie later on. So clearly that story got spread around.
It sure did.
But that is a true story. That actually did happen as we're standing as attention outside the director of operations. So we went in. And I won't tell you the rest of the story, but I flew the next day.
You did.
But on paper, it looked like I got beat up pretty bad.
So do you beat up your chaplains pretty bad?
Only the ones that deserve it. Actually, only the ones that like it. No. I hear laughter here. This is good.
There's this idea you have that that there's a degree of compassion you have as a leader in the church that military officers don't necessarily have.
Right.
And that's a big transition.
What's interesting to me, and what I have discovered, particularly among my chaplains, is, and this is no boasting, I promise you, I'm not boasting. It's
okay if you boast a little
but
bit.
the Lord has really just brought these people to us. It is the most talented group of people. It's a good thing that they have morals and ethics, because I think we could be the most notorious crime ring in the world with the skill sets that everybody has. But from an education standpoint, more than 80% of my chaplains have doctorate degrees, right? That's unheard of. On my staff, for example, I don't want to call anybody out by name, because if I forget somebody, they'll get their feelings hurt. But I don't want to do that. But I've got, a lot of people say they can multitask. I have true multitaskers that can keep juggling multiple balls in the air all at one time and get things done at such a high degree of efficiency. It's really impressive, some of the folks that we've got.
I would need to say right now that you'd have the second best group, because we have the best group.
I believe it. I won't argue with you. You're hosting me this week. We'll argue next week when it's over.
We have the best group of multitaskers. But that's the thing. You get folks who have a heart for the Lord, and they've got to have that flexibility and that ability to do more than one thing at one time.
Well, I know you're blessed to have Nathan.
There's a lot
Weaver.
going on.
I know you're blessed to have Nathan.
Oh, yeah.
And he's one of our military guys, and he's a multitasker.
Yeah, I think our staff is somewhere between 30 and 40 now.
Wow.
And there's a lot of folks here that can do that. And you look for the heart first.
Yes, sir.
And then the skill set and everything that comes after that. And Nathan and Rebecca are right on top of all that.
Right.
So what do you hope to accomplish this week here? You're bringing these people all in from there. I talked to one of them yesterday, and he's coming from Okinawa. Now, that's a long way away.
He's here from Okinawa. We have them coming literally, the Navy will fly them off of their boats and their carriers while they're out at sea to get them back. The military understands just how important this training is that we get. They'll be hearing from First Liberty Institute with the legal counsels, Ms. Danielle Runyon and Kelly McLean will be here to talk about the current issues affecting, of course, the jurisdiction. I'm the executive director for the Chaplain Alliance for Religious Liberty, which are a bunch of endorsing agents, such as myself, from other faith groups who have come together to protect military religious liberty. So they'll be here to give a religious liberty update. They'll continue to receive, our newest chaplains receiving new training on how to be effective, strong moral leaders, moral compasses to their supervisors, bosses, and companies that they work for. We'll get all of that done. But the jurisdiction began as the deanery of the chaplaincy under Cana in 2007, then became the first diocese of Cana from the Church of Nigeria, and then that diocese became a jurisdiction. Of course, we don't have archdioceses, so the closest we have are jurisdictions. And so became a jurisdiction. And we've gone through significant growth. Now that we've hit that 300 number, it has required a reorganization, and this is our first meeting under the new reorganization. So we have developed a director for missions, a director for governance, a director for Anglican Office for Government and International Affairs. And so this will be the first exposure for all of our chaplains to know and understand how that is working. And based upon the report that I'm hearing just this morning with the executive committee of the jurisdiction, it's going quite well. And so our hope moving forward then is we are positioned for the next year. We currently have 90 individuals making application to become chaplains. 90.
Whoa.
That's what's in our accessions process right now. And we've got a talented accessions team, but it's a year to a year and a half, sometimes 2-year process to be a chaplain because you have to understand. I don't have 100 pew sitters who can be tattletales every Sunday. I'm sending somebody else to be on their own, sometimes very afraid, very alone, and I have to trust that they're apologetic and their understanding of the faith is stable enough that we don't lose anybody.
Now, these 80 or 90 that are in the process, they're already ordained in some denomination, or is this like a seminary?
Yeah, so about 1/4 are from, actually 1/4 to a third are from other faith groups. About 1/4 are currently ordained individuals that have decided they may have a call to chaplaincy. And then the rest are students and applicants that are getting ready to attend and go to seminaries. And we exclusively use just approved. We have a list of approved seminaries. We don't accept all seminaries. We point folks to Nashotah House, to Trinity Anglican Seminary. TAS, it used to be TSM, now TAS, Beeson Divinity School, and a couple of others. We're starting to work closely. We're close to an agreement with another school that's in the southeast that's close to here that we won't say yet until the agreement's done, for them to become one of our approved seminaries.
How have you seen the chaplaincy change over the years?
I think the biggest change, which has been a welcome change, is many of our Protestant faith groups, chaplaincy used to be the place where burned out pastors or people that couldn't hack it in the pulpit would go. And now people are not really knocking down the door to get into churches, and businesses and organizations are realizing that their chaplains better have their act together. And so we're seeing a smaller influx and a far more emphasis on professional chaplaincies and professional endorsement. You can go out and be a chaplain and not require what's called ecclesiastical endorsement, but you're not going to become a certified professional chaplain unless you have that endorsement. That's a positive change that's happened, and I'm glad to say that we've been part of that change.
Has the chaplaincy training changed as the population has changed?
Some universities...
We're much more secular now than we
It has
used to
tried to become more secular, so there are some programs out there that are, you get a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in chaplaincy. That's a mistake. We fight against it, and we don't accept those degrees. We say, no, you have to go back and get an MDiv or an equivalent degree. People are always trying to shortcut, and there's a big move in the secular world to try to secularize chaplaincy and remove the religious element. We stand in opposition to that. And that's the reason why groups like the National Conference on Ministry to the Armed Forces, the Chaplain Alliance for Religious Liberty, and the Anglican Office for Government and International Affairs, that's the reason why they all exist, is to combat those tendencies that exist.
Well, you mentioned chaplains in businesses. Are there many businesses that have chaplains?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. We have, in fact, there's 2 major groups that provide chaplains. They're competitors, so I won't mention. I can only remember the name of one of them. It's called Marketplace Chaplaincy, and then the other one's Corporate Chaplains of America. Those 2 are the competing companies, but I've got chaplains that are employed by those companies, and goodness, you look at a place like Tyson Chicken, they have over 100 chaplains.
Really?
Yes.
Now, are those chaplains functioning in a way that local churches used to function? Are they providing those kinds of things?
They are primarily a confessional office, counseling office. They represent faith group traditions to help guide the companies on, say you've got a Muslim holiday that the company that's predominantly Christian owned and run and understood doesn't necessarily see, but they'll have employees that are Muslim, so the chaplain will be able to interact with those employees, make sure those rights of conscience are maintained, things of that nature. Coca-Cola. There's several companies that do employ chaplains as part of their work.
Now, would those companies help support the greater jurisdiction? Or would they support their chaplains, I'm sure?
They support their chaplains, their employees, and then the chaplains being paid by those institutions then tithe to the jurisdiction. That's what we survive on. Yeah, we are desperately in need. I dare say, I believe your church actually, as an apportionment to the diocese, what a church is capable of giving is nearly almost 1/2 of our budget for a year.
Yeah, we give, $300,000 a year, I think it is.
Yeah, our budget is less than $1 million a year. So, and yet we're able to do what we're able to do with it. I think most people, we've had 3 audits. We had a professional evaluation done by the Calvin Edwards Company. He's been doing this. He does the large groups such as the Graham Ministries and things of that nature. He wrote a cover letter, said that the jurisdiction of the armed forces and chaplaincy was the best organization he'd ever evaluated. Whoa. And that was on the front, and that's after 30 plus years.
You on the back.
Well, and we've had 3 external audits, and all 3 have come back with 0 discrepancies with minimal recommendations for change, which is unusual from any audit company.
Yep. But that is so important in this day and time where, you don't have to wait but every couple of weeks, and there's something in there about churches that somebody's taking money or stuff's going the wrong way. And,
yep.
And it paints a broad brush of unaccountability or lack of respect for God's resources that the public just kind of shies away from. So,
got time for one more story?
Yes, sir.
So the first audit, they're doing the first audit, and I was nervous. This is my first real audit as a leader, because in the military, I've got a boss that's going to get in trouble. But they told me, yeah, they'll talk to you for about 2 or 3 hours and that sort of thing. So I got on the phone. They asked me one question. I answered it, and then there was quiet. And I was silent for a moment. I said, did we lose a connection? They said, no, we just want to thank you. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. They said, well, we have been doing audits for many years, and we always hear about church organizations that save people. And this was right after the jurisdiction, the Anglican Office for Government and International Affairs, that we had successfully hidden, moved from place to place, and then got to the U.S., the Salimi family, to avoid execution in Iran. That's one of our offices, one of our functions that we did. And the individual said, we've always heard about these churches that send people into the dark places and rescue them and bring them out. We never thought we'd get to audit one. And it was our honor to audit you. Whoa. And I was floored. I didn't know what to say. I said, well, thank you. I mean, for us, it's just what we do. We didn't think of it as kind of being special, but we had to get the Salimi. We just recently have secured the paperwork for Archbishop Buba Lamido, who is the former dean of the Church in Nigeria, whose life has been under constant threat from Fuliji tribesmen and Boko Haram. We've now gotten him approved and all done with his paperwork. He'll be joining Father Chuck Tebow down in his church in Texas. And so we have the opportunity to do all that. But when you talk about accountability, there are folks that wouldn't trust us if we weren't being very, very careful about how we spend and how we exercise our mission.
That's exactly right.
We had one, when we learned that things were starting to heat up in Niger, people may remember that just from about a year ago, we had a chaplain in place. That chaplain in place was not only serving the service members, but was going outside the wire to help with local underground Christian churches that are all now kind of formed as Anglicans. There's not any diocese or anybody that can do that type of thing, but the jurisdiction can.
It's important work.
It's great work.
And a lot of it's behind the scenes too.
90% of what we do is behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We exist in the margins. We exist in the margins of ministry in the ACNA, unfortunately.
So what are you hoping that you're going to have Bishop Steve Wood is going to be here?
He'll be here as the chief consecrator.
Foley Beach will be here.
Foley Beach will be here. Foley and Bob Duncan have been, they have continued to keep close relationship. In fact, we had to rely on Archbishop Duncan as we were creating a recent publication for our chaplains, of basically a field book for them. and they've remained. Not quite as embraced yet by Bishop Wood, but he's still getting his feet underneath him. So we expect to.
So how many bishops you think is going to be here this week?
My understanding is that we know we have at least one international bishop. Hans Jensen is coming from Latvia. And he's going to be one of the co-consecrators. My understanding is that we have 10 additional bishops in addition to the 5 co-consecrators that will be here. So it'll be quite a number of bishops.
That's a crowd of purple, isn't it?
Anybody from your church that wants to come, they are welcome to attend.
We don't have any bishops here. Yeah. But now, when all that many bishops get together, do y'all compare who's got the biggest mitre and prettiest cope and all that kind of stuff?
I watch them. I just watch them fiddle around. I don't get involved in that because I do have the biggest
There is
mitre
a lot
and
of
the larger cope.
You have,
Yeah. That's what a fighter pilot would say.
That's it, isn't it? Huh? Nose up.
There we go.
Going. But I know it's going to be really, really special. And I know you've got Nathan and Rebecca and Charlie and the whole crowd here, and that we'll provide whatever resources we can for you. And,
well, you already have. If we could come here every year, we would. But just thank you again, and all the people of your church. We're everywhere, Chuck. We're everywhere, and our chaplains. This is the first place they ever requested that we could return to.
Really?
Yeah, we've been going since 2007, and by and large, every chaplain. Every comment that we got 2 years ago was, let's come back here.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that we have the resources and talents and all that to be able to host you, too.
Thank you.
And I do love your smile.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Can I pray for you?
The beard makes you look like Brad Pitt.
I know. Everybody says it makes me look older, and I just, I get no respect. So.
I don't know that the beard makes you look older. There's some other things that might make you look older. But
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bless you, my friend.
Gracious. All right.
Thank you all for being with us today. Please keep in mind that we've got the prayer request play for the chaplain's convocation that's going on here, for the little people in the camp, the preschool program going on. Don't forget the food bank. You got 400 and something families every week coming to that. We need your contributions to continue with that, and thank you so much for your contributions of food and prayer. And we got God's gifts going on over there too, and just so much. You can't do everything. Be faithful in your prayers. Be faithful in your study of Scripture. Be faithful in worship. And be faithful in serving others in the Lord's name. And in all that we do here, know that God loves you, and I love you too. Got a hug for you when I see you. Blessings.